Okay, let's do another quick example. This time, let's do a CORS example. And for this CORS example, I'm going to use the Ajax Weather Mock API that I put out as part of the helper for your lab, talking Ajax to the Open Weather Data API. If you recall, I put out a mock API in JavaScript with the intent that you could deploy it locally or somewhere and generate some fake data that was always changing, so you didn't have to wait around for those change events from the Open Weather Map uh, API. The code for that, I basically commented out the calls to Open Weather Map that you see here, and I inserted calls to localhost. I was running it on port 8081. So I just put that in there with some simple parameters to indicate what city you were trying to access to get different values. So right now I'm not running the node server. So when I loaded this page, this is this HTML page, the Ajax Weather Mock API, I get no values because I got an error connection refused. So let's go ahead and run that. I have the open weather data. Let's take a look at it first. Um, this version. And the key part to look here is there's no CORS header being written. There's no allow access header being written. As you can see here, it's just returning the JSON type that I'm encoding from up here with the random stuff that I added before. So I'm running, even though I'm serving off of localhost right now, the Ajax Weather mock HTML file, my client-side application, my SPA, if you will, is running on my default web server on my laptop, standard port 80. As you can see, I didn't have a port number, but I'm going to a different web server, port 8081. So that alone will constitute a cross-origin request that, in theory, should get rejected. So let's run our API. I'm ready. So now I'll go back to my browser and I'll hit reload. All right. And so I still have an empty page, and now I don't get a network connection refused. There's a server listening there now that I navigated to, but now I have a problem because I don't have the CORS header, the access control allow origin header, present in this cross origin request. In fact, if I go over to the network part, I double click that again. Let me make this a little wider so we can see the dev tools a little better and narrow that. Right, when I start looking at my response headers, right, I don't have anything in there for an allow cross-origin access, if you will. Likewise, when I make these Ajax calls over here, notice how my browser, by virtue of knowing that it's making an Ajax call using the XML HTTP request object, I am sending the request origin header. That's the pre-flight part that we talked about. The browser controls this, and the browser says, hey, I'm giving you the request header that tells you what the origin was. And it's saying the origin for my refer, if you look, is localhost. That's the server I'm coming from. Yet, I'm going to 8081, so it knows it's going to a different server even though it's on the same host. And again, I'm not getting back anything that says that is allowed. Same thing over here. I should see the same thing. There's my origin on the second Ajax request that's made in there, and certainly if I try and do the same thing with a third request and look at the same thing, I will find, again, same thing, my origin request, but in my response I do not have the CORS header. So I'm getting an empty table up here. I'm not displaying anything. Perhaps you had this happen to you in Lab 5. So we have to add a CORS header associated with this. So let's go back over here. I'm going to stop the server. I already have this kind of in here, so I'm going to just move it into place so I didn't have to type it in. I'll show you what that looks like. It's just one line. All right, I'm going to move that on top of my JavaScript file. Let's look now at what this code is. Right here in this line, right? I was showing you the header before. Now I've got a header. Now this is just doing a wildcard entry. I'm allowing anything. I could have specifically allowed only localhost 8081 if I wanted to. All right, but now the server is going to respond with this extra header which will indicate back to the browser that the browser now has the control to allow the request. Now, this is one of those things again where ultimately the control is the browser. The browser is the one running the single page application. The browser gets to decide whether or not it's going to trust stuff coming from this header. It could still, even what we're trying to say is, it could still decide not to allow this header, and it could still decide to reject it and not go through with the API call. All right, but according to the course specification, it should, because this is a valid header with a wildcard entry, which means basically allow the request from anybody. All right, so let's go back. Let's rerun. I'm now ready. Let's go back here. I'm going to clear this traffic, and I'm going to reload the app. Oh, now I got two values, right? Now I can look. I can... Let's make this even bigger. I can look at the same headers, right? I've got my origin now, but now I can look and I've got the response header, allow access control origin, right? It's on that one. It's on the Phoenix one. It'll be on a third one, right, for Sydney. And now all good to go. All right, so that's very simple. Request pre-flight. I specify the origin. I then indicate, the server indicates the access control allow response header with a filter. I'm using a promiscuous filter. I'm basically saying everybody can call it, but the browser still has to accept that and apply it and still be willing to make the call. And again, that is up to the browser's policy to do that.